They had never seen anything like it. A massive humpback whale, one of the ocean's most magnificent creatures, was trapped in a deadly commercial fishing net off the coast of California. Fishermen rushed to help. But what left everyone speechless wasn't just the whale they found, it was what was wrapped around it alongside the netting. Because in that moment, in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, miles from any Coast Guard station, instinct turned into something else. Something we don't often talk about in the depths: sacrifice, loyalty, and a kind of devotion that doesn't need words. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel, hit like, and turn on notifications. Because the story you're about to hear will make you question everything you thought you knew about marine life and the bonds they form in the vast ocean. The waters off Monterey Bay were particularly rough that cold November morning. Late autumn storms had been battering the California coast for weeks, bringing 20-foot swells and winds that made commercial fishing extremely dangerous. The National Weather Service had issued small craft advisories for 3 consecutive days, warning of gale-force winds, dangerous seas, and conditions that could prove fatal to inexperienced mariners. But the small fleet of independent boats that worked these waters had families to feed, mortgages to pay, boat payments that couldn't wait for perfect weather, and the knowledge that the ocean provides only brief windows of opportunity for those brave enough to take them. Captain Mike Rodriguez, a deeply weathered 54-year-old fisherman whose face told the story of over 30 years battling the Pacific Ocean, stood on the bridge of his vessel, the Santa Maria, scanning the horizon through salt-stained windows that had witnessed countless storms, dangerous rescues, and the daily struggle of making a living from the sea. His calloused hands gripped the wheel with the confidence that comes from surviving situations that would terrify most people, but also with the humility that comes from understanding that the ocean could claim him at any moment if he made the wrong decision. Mike had inherited the Santa Maria from his father, Carlos Rodriguez, who had fished these same treacherous waters for 43 years, before a massive heart attack ended his career on a day when the seas were calm and the fishing was good, proving that danger could come from within as well as from the ocean. The boat was older now, 38 years of hard use, showing signs of wear from decades of battling Pacific storms. Her paint was faded and peeling, her engine needed constant maintenance and careful nursing, and her hull bore scars from encounters with rocks, reefs, debris, and the occasional collision with marine mammals. But she was solid, reliable, and had brought 3 generations of the Rodriguez family through good times and bad times, through profitable seasons and lean years, through celebrations and tragedies. The commercial fishing business had become increasingly difficult over the years, with stricter environmental regulations that limited where and when they could fish, depleted fish stocks, due to decades of industrial overfishing by massive commercial operations, competition from factory ships that could afford sophisticated equipment and technology, rising fuel costs that ate into already razor-thin profit margins, and an endless maze of bureaucratic requirements that seemed designed to drive small operators out of business. But Mike and his crew persisted because the ocean was in their blood, because this was the only life they had ever known, because they believed in the importance of sustainable fishing practices that would preserve these waters for future generations, and because they understood that their way of life represented something valuable that was rapidly disappearing from the modern world. His crew consisted of 5 experienced fishermen who had become more like family than employees. Over the years, they shared the dangers, the bone-deep exhaustion, the occasional triumph, and the frequent disappointments that defined life as small-scale commercial fishermen working in an industry that was being transformed by forces beyond their control. David Santos, his first mate and childhood friend from the same small fishing community where Mike had grown up, was a 50-year-old father of 3, whose weathered hands could tie complex knots in complete darkness, whose intuitive understanding of ocean currents, fish behavior, and weather patterns had saved them from disaster more times than Mike could count, and whose loyalty to the crew and the boat had never wavered despite offers to work for larger operations that could pay better wages. Carlos Mendez, a skilled net handler whose family had been fishermen for 4 generations, possessed an almost supernatural ability to read the tension in fishing lines and nets, to sense when equipment was about to fail, and to predict the behavior of fish based on subtle changes in water temperature, current direction, and the movement of seabirds. His grandfather had taught him that the ocean would tell you everything you needed to know if you learned how to listen, and Carlos had spent 35 years perfecting that art, developing an intuition that bordered on mystical. Tony Ricci, an experienced navigator and weather reader who could predict storm patterns hours before official forecasts issued warnings, had joined the crew 15 years earlier, after his own boat was destroyed in a hurricane that caught him unprepared 20 miles from shore. His ability to find safe harbors, navigate treacherous waters in near-zero visibility, and read the subtle signs that indicated dangerous weather approaching had earned him legendary status among local fishermen who would call him for advice before venturing out in questionable conditions. Roberto Flores, a young but incredibly talented fisherman who was eager to learn traditional fishing methods from the older generation, represented the future of sustainable fishing practices. He was working toward his captain's license while studying marine biology at the local community college, believing that scientific knowledge and traditional wisdom could work together to protect ocean resources, develop better fishing techniques, and ensure that future generations would be able to make a living from the sea. Maria Vasquez, one of the few women working the commercial fishing boats in Monterey Bay, could outwork most men when it came to handling heavy equipment, operating complex winches, processing fish under difficult conditions, and maintaining her composure during emergencies. Her presence on the crew had initially caused controversy in the traditionally male-dominated fishing community, but her skill, dedication, fearless approach to dangerous work, and ability to keep the crew focused during crisis situations had earned universal respect and changed attitudes about women in commercial fishing. They had been searching since 3:30 in the morning for a school of albacore tuna that had been reported in the area by other boats. The previous evening, the fish finder showed promising signs with temperature breaks, underwater ridges, and concentrations of bait fish that typically indicated larger predatory fish nearby. But the rough seas made it extremely difficult to maintain position over the most promising areas, deploy their nets effectively, and distinguish between fish schools and false readings caused by debris air bubbles and the turbulent water conditions. The Santa Maria pitched and rolled in 12-foot swells that sent green water over her bow, while Mike tried to keep her positioned over the most promising fishing grounds. The engine strained against the powerful current and increasing wind, while the crew prepared their equipment, checked safety lines, and watched for signs of the tuna school that could make the difference between a profitable trip and another financial loss that would bring them closer to bankruptcy. The weather was deteriorating rapidly, with wind gusts increasing to over 30 knots and wave heights building to dangerous levels that made normal fishing operations extremely hazardous. But Mike and his crew had invested too much time, fuel, and hope into this trip to turn back without at least attempting to locate the fish that could pay their bills for the next month. David Santos, who was manning the bow watch position, equipped with high-powered binoculars and scanning the waters for signs of fish, birds, or floating debris, called out to Mike around 8:30 that morning, his voice carrying clearly over the sound of wind and waves. "Captain, there's something big in the water about half a mile off the starboard side. Looks like it might be floating debris or maybe a dead whale. But it's not moving right. With the waves, there's something wrong about it." Mike immediately grabbed his powerful marine binoculars, military-grade equipment that had cost him nearly $1,000, but could resolve fine details at extreme distances, and focused on the area David had indicated. Through the choppy gray water, morning mist, and spray from the breaking waves, he could make out a large dark mass that didn't move with the natural rhythm of the ocean swells. What he saw made his experienced fisherman's heart sink with immediate recognition and growing anger at the thoughtless waste he was witnessing. There, floating at the surface, struggling weakly against massive tangles of commercial fishing net, was an adult humpback whale easily 45 feet long and probably weighing close to 40 tons. The magnificent creature was barely moving, its powerful tail flukes occasionally breaking the surface in what appeared to be exhausted attempts to break free from the deadly embrace of thick synthetic netting that had obviously been abandoned by some careless commercial operation. But as Mike adjusted the focus on his binoculars and ordered the Santa Maria to change course toward the scene, he began to realize this wasn't just another tragic case of a whale accidentally swimming into abandoned fishing gear. This situation was far more complex, heartbreaking, and unprecedented than anything he had encountered in 3 decades of working these dangerous waters. Wrapped around the adult whale alongside the thick commercial netting was something that made Mike's weathered hands shake as he held the binoculars steady against the boat's violent motion. The unmistakable form of a smaller whale, a juvenile humpback probably no more than 6 months old that appeared to be completely lifeless. Its small body pressed close against the larger whale's massive flank in a position that spoke of protection and desperate love. The adult whale, which Mike immediately recognized as the calf's mother based on their relative positioning size difference, and the obviously protective way she held the smaller body, was still alive, but clearly weakening rapidly. Her breathing was labored and irregular, creating visible spouts of mist each time she managed to surface, and her movements were becoming increasingly sluggish as exhaustion, blood loss, and the emotional trauma of losing her calf took their inevitable toll. As they maneuvered closer, fighting the rough seas, strong currents, and increasing wind, Mike could see that the commercial fishing net was not just wrapped around both whales. It was embedded deep into their flesh, particularly around the mother's massive pectoral fins, dorsal area, and the base of her powerful tail. The heavy-duty netting, designed to hold tons of struggling fish, had created deep lacerations that bled steadily into the surrounding water, creating an expanding red slick that attracted seabirds, small sharks, and other scavengers. The mother whale's massive eye, which was occasionally visible above the waterline as she struggled to maintain her position at the surface, despite her weakening condition, was focused not on the approaching boat or the potential threat it might represent, but entirely on her dead calf. She was using her enormous pectoral fins, each nearly 15 feet long and weighing several tons, to hold the smaller whale's body against her own belly, in a gesture so obviously protective, maternal, and heartbreaking that it brought tears to Mike's weathered eyes. Mike immediately switched his marine radio to the emergency frequency and began broadcasting a distress call that would bring professional help, but also forever change how he understood the intelligence, emotional capacity, and depth of feeling possessed by marine mammals. Coast Guard, Monterey Bay. This is fishing vessel Santa Maria, vessel number CF4425. Current position approximately 12 miles southwest of Monterey Bay. We have encountered a humpback whale severely entangled in commercial fishing net. Appears to be an adult female with deceased calf. Both animals trapped in heavy-duty netting. Whale is alive but weakening rapidly. Require immediate marine mammal rescue response. This is a life-threatening emergency, requesting immediate assistance. The Coast Guard response came back within 3 minutes. Santa Maria. This is Coast Guard Station, Monterey Bay. We copy your emergency distress call, dispatching rescue helicopter with marine mammal response team. Estimated arrival time 45 minutes. Maintain safe distance and do not attempt rescue operations without proper equipment and training. Entangled whale rescues are extremely dangerous operations that require specialized personnel and equipment, but Mike and his experienced crew couldn't just stand by and watch the magnificent creature die slowly while they waited for help to arrive. They began preparing their own boat's emergency equipment, including heavy-duty bolt cutters, industrial hacksaws, grappling hooks, safety lines, and flotation devices, while maintaining a respectful distance from the trapped whale, and beginning to document the scene with cameras and video equipment for both rescue planning and potential scientific study. Mike also used his radio to contact other fishing boats in the area, broadcasting on the common frequency used by local fishermen. Within 30 minutes, 4 additional vessels had responded to his call and were heading toward their position through the rough seas, including the Maria Elena, captained by Mike's cousin Eduardo Rodriguez, who had been fishing these waters for 25 years. The Pacific Dream, whose captain Jenny Morrison was one of the most experienced whale rescuers among the local fishing fleet and had participated in dozens of marine mammal rescue operations. The Morning Star, captained by veteran fisherman Bill Chen, who had been working these waters for over 40 years and had developed a reputation for his knowledge of whale behavior, and the San Joaquin, captained by Ricardo Morales, a younger fisherman who had recently completed advanced marine safety training. As they waited for professional help to arrive, Mike and his crew were able to observe and document whale behavior that none of them had ever seen before in over a century of combined fishing experience. Despite having worked around marine mammals for their entire careers, the mother whale was clearly exhausted and in severe pain from her wounds, which appeared to be infected and bleeding heavily, but she absolutely refused to release her grip on her dead calf, even though doing so might have allowed her to escape from some of the entangling netting. Every few minutes, the mother would use her massive head weighing several tons to gently nudge the smaller whale's body, repositioning it more securely against her belly. When ocean currents threatened to pull the calf away from her protective embrace, she would adjust her own position in the water, using precious energy and causing herself additional pain to maintain contact with her offspring, even though this behavior was clearly hastening her own death. David Santos, who had been taking photographs with a waterproof camera and documenting the scene for potential scientific study and to aid the rescue operation, whispered to Mike, his voice filled with emotion. "Captain, I've been around whales my whole life working these waters, but I've never seen anything like this behavior. It's like she's protecting that baby. Even though she knows it's gone, she's choosing to die, rather than let go of her calf." Maria Vasquez, who had grown up in a family of whale watchers, marine biologists, and ocean conservationists, added her voice thick with emotion and wonder. "My grandmother used to tell stories about whales grieving for their dead, showing complex emotions and refusing to abandon deceased family members. But I always thought they were just folklore, romanticized tales, until now. Look at her. She's not trying to escape. She's holding on to that calf like her own life doesn't matter." Carlos Mendez, who rarely spoke during work operations and was known for his practical, stoic approach to the dangers of fishing, said quietly in his accented English that, "Whale, she knows her baby is dead. She understands death, but she won't leave him alone. She's staying with him even if it kills her. That's the strongest love I've ever seen from any creature, human or animal." Tony Ricci, who had seen countless marine mammals during his years of navigation, added while adjusting his binoculars, "The way she's positioned her body. She's not just holding the calf. She's protecting it from scavengers, from the current, from anything that might take it away from her. This is deliberate, intelligent behavior, not just instinct." Roberto Flores, the youngest crew member whose marine biology studies had taught him about animal behavior, theories said with awe in his voice, "Everything I've learned in school says this shouldn't be happening. Whales don't have the cognitive capacity for this kind of prolonged grief and protective behavior, but we're watching it happen. This is going to change textbooks." The assembled fishing boats formed a protective perimeter around the trapped whale, both to prevent other vessels from accidentally causing further harm, and to provide additional equipment, manpower, and expertise. When the professional rescue team arrived, the captains maintained constant radio contact, sharing observations, coordinating their positions to create the safest possible environment for the rescue operation, and discussing the unprecedented behavior they were witnessing. During the wait, several crew members noticed other marine life in the area. Behaving unusually, dolphins were swimming in tight circles around the trapped whale, maintaining a respectful distance, but clearly agitated by the situation and making vocalizations that seemed to express distress. Seabirds were calling incessantly, creating a cacophony of alarm calls that seemed to echo the tragedy unfolding in the water. Even the usual schools of fish seemed to be avoiding the area as if they sensed something was terribly wrong. Eduardo Rodriguez radioed from the Maria Elena mic. "I've been watching through my scope. There are other whales in the area staying back maybe half a mile, but clearly aware of what's happening. I count at least 6 adults, maybe more, moving slowly in this direction. They know one of their own is in trouble." Jenny Morrison from the Pacific Dream added her voice, carrying the authority of someone who had seen dozens of whale rescues. "I've witnessed many whale entanglements over the years, but never anything like this. The mother's behavior is completely unprecedented. She's literally choosing death over abandoning her calf. This challenges everything we know about animal behavior and intelligence." Bill Chen from the Morning Star observed through his powerful telescope, "There's something else the way the other whales are positioning themselves. They're not just randomly swimming, they're forming some kind of pattern, like they're preparing for something. I've never seen whales coordinate their movements like this." Ricardo Morales from the San Joaquin added excitedly, "This is incredible. I'm getting all of this on video. The scientific community needs to see this behavior. We're witnessing something that's never been documented before." The professional marine mammal rescue team arrived via Coast Guard helicopter exactly 42 minutes after Mike's initial distress call, in a carefully coordinated operation that had been practiced hundreds of times but never under conditions quite like these. The rescue was led by Dr. Sarah Chen, an internationally renowned marine biologist from the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute, who had been studying humpback whale behavior, migration patterns, communication systems, and social structures for over 20 years. Dr. Chen rappelled down to the Santa Maria carrying specialized cutting equipment that had been developed specifically for whale entanglement emergencies, including diamond wire saws that could cut through the thickest rope, underwater communication gear that could project whale-like vocalizations, emergency medical supplies designed for treating injuries in large marine mammals, and flotation devices that could support the weight of whale body parts during rescue operations. Her rescue team included Dr. James Wright, a marine mammal behaviorist from Stanford University, who had published groundbreaking research on cetacean intelligence, emotional capacity, and social learning. Dr. Lisa Korean from UC Santa Cruz, whose work on whale social structures, family relationships, and communication had revolutionized understanding of marine mammal communities. Dr. Michael Torres from the University of California. Davis, whose expertise in whale physiology and emergency medicine had saved dozens of marine mammals, and 3 Coast Guard rescue specialists, who had been specially trained in marine mammal emergency response protocols and had participated in over 50 whale rescue operations. What Dr. Chen found when she first entered the water equipped with underwater cameras, breathing apparatus, and communication equipment exceeded even her extensive experience with whale behavior and rescue operations, which included over 300 successful whale disentanglement missions throughout the Pacific Ocean. The adult whale, which was clearly the calf's mother based on their size difference, relative positioning, and obvious biological relationship, was maintaining deliberate, sustained physical contact with her deceased offspring, using her massive pectoral fins to cradle the smaller body against her own, in a display of maternal protection and grief that defied scientific understanding of cetacean emotional capacity. This is completely unprecedented and challenges fundamental assumptions about whale intelligence. Dr. Chen reported to the rescue team and the assembled boat crews through her underwater communication system. Humpback whales are known for extremely strong maternal bonds and have been documented showing various grief behaviors when calves die. But I have never seen documented or read about a mother whale refusing to abandon a deceased calf when her own survival is clearly and immediately at stake. This behavior suggests cognitive and emotional complexity that science has never recognized. The rescue operation would require extraordinary precision, careful coordination, advanced equipment, and techniques that pushed the limits of marine mammal rescue technology. The commercial fishing net appeared to be industrial-grade material, designed for deep-sea trawling operations, capable of holding many tons of struggling fish, and it had become wrapped around both whales in an incredibly complex three-dimensional pattern that had tightened, twisted, and embedded over what appeared to be several days of desperate struggling by both animals. Cutting the wrong section of netting could cause the remaining nets to constrict further, potentially killing the mother whale instantly, or causing her to panic and dive to dangerous depths, which could result in drowning, massive internal injuries from the embedded netting that was already cutting into vital organs, or decompression sickness that could prove fatal. As Dr. Chen and her team began their detailed assessment of the entanglement pattern using underwater cameras, specialized measurement tools, and computer modeling software, they realized they were dealing with one of the most complex and dangerous whale rescue scenarios ever documented. The netting was not only wrapped around both animals in multiple overlapping layers, but had become twisted, knotted, and embedded in ways that would require hours of careful cutting with tools that had never been tested in such extreme conditions. The mother whale's behavior during the initial rescue assessment was remarkable and completely contrary to normal whale behavior in entanglement situations. Instead of panicking, struggling violently, attempting to dive away from the approaching humans, or displaying the aggressive defensive behavior typical of trapped whales, she remained almost completely motionless in the water, as if she understood that the people entering the water were trying to help rather than harm her. However, every time any member of the rescue team approached the area where the dead calf was most heavily entangled, the mother whale would gently but firmly move her massive head to block their access. Her message was unmistakably clear. She was protecting her offspring's body from what she perceived as potential threats, even from the humans who were obviously trying to save her life. It took Dr. Chen and her team over 3 hours of careful observation, underwater photography, behavioral analysis, and consultation with whale behavior experts around the world to understand the full complexity of the mother whale's protective behavior. She was not simply refusing to abandon her calf in some instinctive biological response. She was actively and intelligently preventing the rescuers from separating her from the smaller whale's body, demonstrating planning foresight and decision-making abilities that challenged basic assumptions about animal consciousness. Dr. Chen made the unprecedented decision to attempt direct communication with the whale using specialized underwater sound equipment that had been developed for research into whale language communication patterns and social behavior. The sophisticated device could project low-frequency calls virtually identical to humpback whale vocalizations, including specific patterns that researchers had identified as associated with maternal behavior, calming influences, social bonding, and cooperative behavior. The team began playing carefully selected recordings of humpback whale songs that conveyed messages of calm, safety, maternal comfort, and cooperative intention, while Dr. Chen approached the mother whale using extremely slow, deliberate movements and gentle touches designed to communicate peaceful intentions rather than threat or aggression. She placed her hands on the whale's massive head, which was larger than most automobiles, and used a series of rhythmic touches that mimicked the kind of physical communication that researchers had observed between mother and calf humpback whales in natural settings. The whale's response was immediate and remarkable. Her entire body seemed to relax slightly, and her massive eye focused directly on Dr. Chen with what could only be described as recognition and understanding. Gradually, over the course of nearly 4 hours, the mother whale began to show subtle but unmistakable signs of trust in the human rescuers. She started to allow Dr. Chen and her team slightly closer access to the netting around her calf's body, but she never completely released her protective hold on the smaller whale and continued to monitor every movement the humans made with obvious intelligence and concern. The actual cutting process became one of the most technically challenging, emotionally demanding, and scientifically significant marine mammal rescues ever attempted. The netting was incredibly thick, constructed from synthetic materials designed to withstand tremendous pressure from struggling fish, powerful ocean currents, and the stresses of commercial fishing operations. And it had become embedded in the whale's flesh. In dozens of locations, some cuts were buried so deep that they had created infected wounds that posed serious health risks beyond the immediate entanglement. Each section of netting had to be cut with extreme care using specialized tools that had been designed to slice through rope and synthetic materials without creating sparks, heat, or vibrations that might panic the whale or cause her to struggle violently. The rescue team worked in carefully coordinated shifts with divers, spending no more than 20 minutes underwater at a time to prevent nitrogen narcosis, decompression sickness, and the exhaustion that could lead to fatal mistakes. Throughout the entire 8-hour rescue operation that stretched from late morning deep into the evening, the mother whale displayed behavior that challenged everything. The scientists, marine biologists, and rescue specialists thought they knew about cetacean intelligence, emotional capacity, problem-solving abilities, and the depth of maternal bonds in marine mammals. She not only remained cooperative with the human rescuers, despite her obvious pain exhaustion and emotional trauma, but seemed to actively assist them by positioning her massive body to provide better access to the most dangerous sections of entangled netting when the rescuers needed to work on nets wrapped around her dorsal fin. The mother whale would roll slightly in the water to give them a better angle, despite the fact that this movement caused her obvious additional pain. When they had to cut nets near her powerful tail flukes, which could easily kill a human with a single blow, she would hold perfectly still for extended periods, despite the natural instinct to move when in pain or distress. When the rescuers needed to access netting that was wrapped around her pectoral fins, she would extend those massive appendages away from her body to give the divers room to work. Dr. Wright, who was documenting every aspect of the rescue operation using multiple underwater cameras and behavioral analysis software, noted that the mother whale seemed to understand the different phases of the rescue process and would modify her behavior accordingly. She would become more alert and attentive when the divers approached, with cutting tools, would remain motionless during actual cutting operations, and would relax slightly when they moved away to assess their progress, change equipment, or rest. The most emotionally difficult and technically challenging part of the rescue came when the team realized they would need to temporarily separate the mother whale from her calf's body in order to remove the final sections of netting that were wrapped around both animals in a complex, intertwined pattern that could not be cut without moving the bodies apart. Dr. Chen spent over 2 hours using underwater communication equipment, gentle physical contact, and what could only be described as interspecies counseling to prepare the mother whale for this necessary separation. The whale's response was heartbreaking and demonstrated emotional intelligence that forced the entire rescue team to reconsider fundamental assumptions about animal consciousness, grief, and the nature of love itself. She would allow the humans to move her calf's body slightly when they explained through touch and sound what they needed to do, but would immediately reposition herself to maintain some form of physical contact with her offspring, even when that contact interfered with the rescue process, prolonged her own suffering, and increased the risk of fatal complications. When they finally cut through the last section of netting that was physically constraining the mother whale's movement and threatening her life, The entire rescue team expected her to immediately swim away to freedom, safety, and the medical attention she desperately needed. Instead, she remained in exactly the same position, continuing to cradle her calf's lifeless body with her massive fins, as if the rescue had changed nothing about her fundamental priority, which was protecting her child. Dr. Chen realized they were witnessing something that had never been scientifically documented, studied, or even theorized about in marine biology literature. The mother whale was engaging in what could only be described as a complex, extended mourning ritual, maintaining contact with her deceased offspring and refusing to allow the body to sink into the depths of the ocean where it would be lost forever. The rescue team made the difficult but necessary decision to allow the mother whale as much time as she needed for this unprecedented display of grief. They maintained a respectful distance, while continuing to document behavior that was rewriting scientific understanding of whale intelligence, emotional capacity, and the existence of complex social rituals in marine mammals. For over 5 hours after being completely freed from the life-threatening netting, the mother whale held her calf close to the surface, occasionally vocalizing with deep, mournful calls that could be heard for miles underwater through the sensitive hydrophones that the research team had deployed. These vocalizations were not the typical humpback whale songs used for long-distance communication, navigation, or mating rituals, but something entirely different, something that sounded unmistakably like expressions of grief, loss, and a mother's love that transcended death itself. The calls were so haunting, obviously emotional, and heartbreakingly beautiful, that several members of the rescue team, fishing boat crews, and Coast Guard personnel were moved to tears as they listened to what could only be described as a whale's lament for her lost child. Other humpback whales throughout the Monterey Bay area began responding to these grief calls, and within 4 hours, a growing pod of adult whales had gathered around the mother and her deceased calf. The assembling whales approached slowly, respectfully, and with obvious understanding, maintaining a distance that suggested they recognized the gravity and sanctity of the situation. First came 3 adult females swimming in formation, then a massive bull whale whose scarred skin indicated he was among the oldest members of the local population, then 5 more adults, including what appeared to be elderly whales whose size and battle scars suggested they had survived decades in these waters. What happened next left the entire rescue team, the crews of the surrounding fishing boats, Coast Guard personnel, and everyone who witnessed it, either in person or through the extensive video documentation, in tears, and fundamentally changed their understanding of animal intelligence, emotion, and the existence of complex social rituals in marine mammals. The assembled pod of 11 adult whales began to vocalize together, creating a complex harmony of low-frequency calls that resonated through the water like an underwater funeral dirge. The haunting song continued for over 3 hours, with different whales taking turns as lead vocalists, while others provided harmonic support in patterns so sophisticated they seemed to follow musical rules and emotional themes. During this extraordinary whale funeral ceremony, the mother slowly began to release her physical grip on her calf, allowing the other whales to approach and make contact with the small body. Each adult whale in the pod took turns gently touching the deceased calf with their fins in what appeared to be a deliberate ritual of goodbye, blessing, and recognition. The pod then began to move in a slow, coordinated circle around the calf's body, with the mother whale at the center of the formation. Their movements were synchronized, purposeful, and deeply moving, creating a living mandala of grief, respect, and love around the small whale who had died too young. Together, the whales began to guide the calf's body toward deeper water in what was unmistakably a burial procession. Their massive bodies moved in perfect coordination as they escorted their smallest member toward the deep waters where whale bodies traditionally come to rest and where the cycle of ocean life continues. The mother whale made several final passes around her offspring, touching the small body with her fins and vocalizing soft personal calls that seemed to be private messages of farewell love and the promise that she would never forget. Only when this final goodbye was complete did she join the other whales in allowing the calf's body to slowly sink into the deep waters of the Pacific. The entire funeral ceremony lasted over 7 hours and was documented by multiple cameras, both underwater and from the boats above. When it was finished, the mother whale surfaced near the rescue boat where Dr. Chen was waiting, her equipment still running to capture every moment of this unprecedented behavior. the massive whale's eye, which was larger than a dinner plate, made direct contact with Dr. Chen and the other rescuers. She remained at the surface for several minutes, floating motionlessly, as if acknowledging their help, expressing gratitude, sharing a moment of mutual understanding that transcended species barriers and communicating something profound about the nature of love loss and the connections that bind all living creatures. Then, with a gentle exhalation that created a rainbow in the mist from her blowhole, the mother whale slowly submerged and swam away with the other members of her adoptive pod who had become her family in grief and would help her heal from the loss that had nearly cost her own life. The rescue operation had not only saved the mother whale's life, but had provided unprecedented documentation of grief, mourning, funeral rituals, complex social behavior, and emotional intelligence in marine mammals that would revolutionize scientific understanding of whale consciousness and challenge basic assumptions about the nature of animal emotion. The video footage, audio recordings detailed behavioral observations, scientific measurements, and witness testimonies became crucial evidence in ongoing research about cetacean consciousness, communication patterns, social structures, and the depth of emotional experience in marine mammals. Dr. Chen spent the following 2 years analyzing the massive amount of data collected during the rescue and funeral ceremony, preparing research papers that would fundamentally change scientific understanding of whale behavior and challenge basic assumptions about animal consciousness, emotion, and the capacity for complex social rituals in non-human species. Her findings, published in multiple prestigious journals including Nature Marine Mammal Science, Animal Behavior, Cognition, and the Journal of Comparative Psychology, described the incident as the most profound and scientifically significant example of animal grief, funeral behavior, interspecies cooperation, and emotional intelligence ever documented. The mother whale's willingness to risk her own life to remain with her deceased calf challenged fundamental assumptions about animal emotions, forced researchers around the world to reconsider the depth and complexity of whale consciousness, and opened new fields of study into the emotional lives of marine mammals. The documented funeral ceremony conducted by the whale pod provided evidence of cultural and ritual behaviors previously thought to exist only in humans and a few other highly intelligent species like elephants, great apes, and dolphins. Captain Mike Rodriguez and his entire crew became passionate advocates for marine conservation, ocean protection, and the recognition of whale intelligence, working closely with environmental organizations to reduce the amount of abandoned commercial fishing gear in the ocean. They donated their boat time expertise and resources to participate in regular net removal operations that prevented similar tragedies from occurring. The story of the mother humpback whale and her ultimate sacrifice for her calf spread rapidly throughout the marine biology community, captured global media attention, and inspired people around the world to reconsider their relationship with marine life. It led to new research initiatives into whale intelligence, communication patterns, emotional behavior, social structures, and the development of more sophisticated rescue techniques. The rescue also resulted in significantly stricter international regulations on commercial fishing operations, improved requirements for net retrieval and disposal, increased funding for abandoned fishing gear removal programs, new protocols for preventing whale entanglements, and enhanced training for fishing crews who might encounter marine mammals in distress. The Monterey Bay Aquarium created a permanent exhibit about the rescue, featuring the actual footage of the whale funeral ceremony. The mother's protective behavior and the scientific discoveries that resulted from the incident, the exhibit, which became one of the most popular and emotionally powerful displays in the aquarium's history, helped educate millions of visitors about whale intelligence, the importance of marine conservation, and the complex emotional lives of ocean creatures. Months after the rescue, fishermen throughout the Monterey Bay area began reporting encounters with a humpback whale that appeared to recognize their boats and would surface nearby as if greeting old friends. Marine biologists who analyzed photographs and video of these encounters confirmed it was the same mother whale, expressing ongoing gratitude to the humans who had helped free her. Dr. Chen continued to receive detailed reports of this whale's behavior for over 4 years after the rescue. The whale would approach fishing boats slowly and peacefully, allowing photographers, researchers, and whale watchers to document her healing scars, continued survival, and apparently improved emotional state. She seemed to have learned to distinguish between the boats that had helped her and other vessels, maintaining a safe distance from unknown craft while showing remarkable trust toward familiar ones. The whale also began displaying behavior that suggested she was teaching other whales in the area about positive interactions with humans. Several instances were documented where the mother whale would approach boats with other whales following her lead, introducing them to human observers in controlled, peaceful encounters that challenged traditional assumptions about whale-human relationships. The rescue inspired the creation of new rapid response protocols for marine mammal emergencies, additional funding for research into whale communication and behavior patterns, the development of improved cutting tools specifically designed for whale entanglement rescues, and enhanced coordination between fishing fleets, marine biologists, and rescue organizations. Marine biology programs at universities worldwide began using the rescue footage as evidence that intelligence, consciousness, complex emotional lives, and sophisticated social behaviors exist throughout the ocean in forms far more advanced than previously imagined. Years later, Dr. Chen, who had become one of the world's leading experts on whale grief, mourning behavior, funeral rituals, and emotional intelligence, continued to study humpback whale consciousness. She lectured at conferences and universities around the world about how the rescue had fundamentally changed scientific understanding of marine consciousness. The mother whale had demonstrated love, sacrifice, grief, ritual behavior, gratitude, and emotional intelligence that proved beyond doubt that cetaceans possessed emotional lives, intellectual capacity, social structures, and consciousness far more complex and sophisticated than science had previously recognized. The rescue had provided definitive evidence that whales experience feelings remarkably similar to human emotions, including the powerful bond between parent and child that transcends death, the capacity for gratitude toward members of other species who offer help in times of crisis, and the ability to form lasting memories of positive interactions with humans. The footage of the whale funeral ceremony was eventually used in documentary films, educational programs, conservation campaigns, and even in discussions about the legal rights of marine mammals, helping to change public perception of whales from simple marine animals to highly intelligent emotional beings, deserving of protection, respect, and legal recognition. Environmental organizations used the story to support campaigns for stronger marine protection laws, reduced commercial fishing in whale migration routes, international cooperation in ocean conservation efforts, and the recognition of cetacean rights. The emotional impact of the mother whale's devotion to her calf helped generate millions of dollars in funding for whale research conservation programs, abandoned fishing gear removal initiatives, and the development of new technologies for protecting marine mammals. The rescue also inspired new international protocols for responding to marine mammal emergencies, improved training for fishing crews who might encounter entangled whales, better coordination between commercial fishermen, marine biologists, rescue organizations, and Coast Guard units, and the development of early warning systems for detecting abandoned fishing gear. If this incredible story of maternal love sacrifice and the profound bonds that exist throughout the natural world touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Leave a like and share it with someone who believes that the ocean holds depths of emotional intelligence and love that we are only beginning to understand. Sometimes the greatest love requires the ultimate sacrifice, and sometimes the bonds between parent and child transcend even death itself, proving that the connections that matter most exist in every corner of the natural world, waiting to teach us about the true meaning of devotion, loyalty, and the courage to love unconditionally.